Hello everybody, it's DuckFeren07 and we are playing a Bushwhacker Vengewine deck again. Okay, so this time it's not a Hollow One deck, it's not Bushwhacker Zoo you could see before on my few months ago on my YouTube channel. It's a kind of a mix between those two. So let's explain what is happening over here. Um, Burning Tree Emissary and Memnite are both cards that we play for efficiently 0 mana, but just we need to pay 2 mana for Emissary, but it gives us 2 mana when enters the battlefield. So efficiently, when paired with Reckless Bushwhacker, it works great and it ends up being a 0 mana spell. Together with our Memnites, we have 8 of those that are really fueling our Reckless Bushwhacker turn 2. And aside from that, we have number of 1 mana spells that are really aggressive. We have 8 1 mana 3/3 creatures in our deck, which can be really aggressive against a lot of competitive matchups nowadays. And we have 8 of these 1 mana creatures that we use to discard cards from our hand into the graveyard. Okay, so cards we want to discard from our hand into the graveyard are 8 of these. So Chancellor of the Tangle and 4 Vengevines. So as you may notice, so far there is 8 of everything here. So 8 of these free mana spells, 8 of these 1 mana creatures that trigger Vengevines but also give us discarded to the graveyard. So very good synergy there. Chancellor gives us very explosive turn once, but we can easily discard it at any time, either for the Neonate, Epicure, or a Cookbook to get the food for to kill a creature, clear the way for the Asmo. So I feel that this list is very synergistic for aggressive deck like this one that aims to kill opponent on turn 3. Okay, so this deck can also have some crazy turns and kill on a turn 2, but generally this deck is aiming to win either on turn 3 or turn 4, sometimes on turn 5, but turn 6, 7 are really not don't really happen a lot. So that is the strategy, and that is what we are trying to do here. Okay, street raids in this deck are used to be able to play the Asmo on turn 1, as we are really trying to be as aggressive as possible. And in a lot of situations, you're gonna get the Chancellor mana. So with street raid, you can maybe even play the Asmo on turn 1 with street rate with cycled, then find the cookbook, discard Vengevine, then play Memnite from your hand. A lot of stuff is possible, and this is partially a combo deck because most of the game depends on your starting 7 cards. So you really can't keep a bad hand. You must keep a hand that can win on turn 3 or 4. If you don't have it, you mulligan, and you mulligan, or if you can win with your mulligan hand, you just concede the game and play the new one. So that is the strategy here. Okay, so I played this type of decks before. I experimented with a lot of sideboard cards, but these cards are always there. So these free cards are just very good. So Chalice of the Void plus Endurance for the Living End. Also, there is Talia, Guardian of Traben, as another way to try to win against these decks. Rhinos is the worst matchup for this deck. So when Rhinos is very good, I tend not to play it. But when Rhinos fall off a bit, I always take this deck and take it for a spin on the MTGO. And it always works out well for me. I mostly get 3/2s with this deck. Sometimes 2/3s if things don't work out the way, but it's not very hard to do a 4-1. Okay, so I never played this exact list in the past, but I played a lot of similar ones. This is the first time I mashed up some things together, and this is the first time I'm using the Vengevine in this list, and I used it because of the Chancellor of the Tangle. So first I tried to incorporate Chancellor of the Tangle in this deck because it has very good potential with these Burning Tree emissaries. Also, before I played Hidden Herbalist too, so and the more green cards. But I think I really like in this list as Chancellor of the Tangle is just very good here, and it is definitely underexploited creature in the modern right now. And getting the free mana on a turn one is a thing that no other deck has the ability to do so far, except maybe Neobrand, of course. But the thing is, this one extra mana on the upkeep can, on first turn, can really be unbeatable for a lot of matchups. And I got into a lot of situations where opponents just concede the game on turn two when your starts are too aggressive, and it really works well. And in the games when you have it, deck feels really strong. There is no problem discarding the Chancellors of the Tangle, and that's why I like it, and that's why I got the idea to include Avengewine too. I've really wanted more ways to discard the Chancellor, and when I got more ways to discard the Chancellor into the deck, then I already also wanted to include Vengevines, but also Asmo, and Asmo is also synergistic with all of these because of it gets you the cookbook. So I think the deck is very well built in this version, and it works very well. There are a few slots on the sideboard I'm still experimenting with. So before I used to play Fury on the sideboard. I think Fury is good. I think Fury can really be good in some matchups, but I learned that this Chain to the Rocks can also be like really good. It's a one mana removal, so that removes everything. So that's kind of just what we are looking for, and all this mana base is red based, so there's never a problem casting this, and it removes everything like Furies, Murktides, Rhinos, Goyves, whatever. So it's I think this is good option. Fury is obviously also good, but it's more of a card that helps you kill multiple small creatures, which can be necessary against things like Hardened Scales, which was the only deck I lost to in my league I played with this list. And if I had the Furies on the sideboard, that probably would be I probably would get a trophy, but unfortunately, I didn't have them. I have Chain to the Rocks. Chain to the Rocks was also pretty good. I can't blame the Chain. The Chain was pretty good. Talia overperformed in the Living End matchup. Also, when you have a Chancellor of the Tangle, sometimes you're able to play it turn one, which is pretty crazy against those Cascade decks, especially Living End, especially non-Rhinos decks. Rhinos have Fury, so they can handle it. But yeah, still, getting the Fury out of their hand can be good. And yeah, that is it. That is the deck. Um, also, in past I played Leyline of Combustion. Leyline of Combustion is used when you have this huge number of small creatures, and you are just trying to punish your opponent for playing a massive amount of removals. So they try to single removal you, just bolting your Asmo, bolting Nightcattle, and stuff like that. And you just board in Lena Combustion, and you play it for free at the start of the game. And all of their removals means 2 damage to the face, which in most situations wins you the game. But I decided to go this time without those 2 cards. I think these options are pretty good, and I think what makes Talia a bit better here than in previous versions I played is the potential to play it on turn one with Chancellor, which can be very huge. So that is it. So let's just go through the league. and watch some games. Okay, so this was the 4-1 league. The first league I played with the deck ended up 4-1. We are going to go through all the games, and these games are often pretty quick, so I doubt that this video will last longer, but it's very fun. As you can see here, so I had multiple options here. The hand is great. I can go this. I can play this in a few different ways. I decided to go for turn one neonate. So on turn two, I can go emissary, discard Vengevine, uh, play reckless bushwhacker. I also draw into second neonate, so I was able to. I'm able to play Asmo next turn, so just wanted to go for the haze this turn, try to be as aggressive as possible. So turn two attacking for 10 damage is pretty good. My opponent also had pretty aggressive starts with cranial plating on Frogmite. So I go for the neonate, play Asmo, find a cookbook. Maybe I should have played the Dryad Arbor here for as a blocker. So that way I could have attacked with Bushwhacker too, but I decided to do it the other way and attacked with just Vengevine, stayed back with Bushwhacker for this turn, and this way I was able to use my cookbook on the in the later turns. My opponent this attacks with the Memnite. I had to block this and change the creatures, and I played the Nettlecyst. Nettlecyst was a problem because it was a 7/7. So what my opponent did was attack with both of these creatures, and I had to block both of them because both of them were attacking for lethal. So they went for attack. They top decked the Ornithopter, equipped it with bolt, and I couldn't do anything because Ornithopter was flying. So that was game over. And let's see the next two games. I have 4 of Vigors on my sideboard, which is all I really need in this matchup. And I'm starting first, having a pretty good hand. My opponent doesn't play removal, so I just play my Dryad Arbor on turn 1. Then I go for the Stomping Ground, play my Emissary, play the cookbook, play the Asmo, and find another cookbook holding Valnecatl in my hand on purpose so I can ditch it to the Force Figure. I decide to use Force Figure immediately to prevent my opponent from playing, I don't know, those 4/4 creatures this turn or something like that. And immediately I go for the Epicure, hold another cookbook in my hand so I can discard it for Asmo, use it to kill a creature, or just maybe discard it to the Blood Token. And attack with everything, put my opponent on 13 with a lot of damage on the field for the later turns. I discard a card, get the second food token, kill the Tot Monitor. They use their Welding Jar to regenerate it, but it gets tapped, so it was good for me because it disabled them from blocking my emissary, so it was a really, really close game. I got a Force of Vigor from the top, so I decided to draw this card, try to find another green card, and I did get it, which was pretty good for me. So in upkeep, I was able to go a Force, again, Nurse Saga and Tot Monitor. They regenerated again, but it was tapped. So I was again able to attack through Monitor, and they untapped with nothing good in their hand, and I succeeded to win this game, but it was definitely a close one. It was also a league of misclicks. I had a few misclicks that almost turned to be pretty costly, but I was lucky enough to win anyway, you will see. Okay, again, I got a good hand. I got one Vengevine in my hand to uh, put into play on turn 2 and another one to pitch on force. My opponent starts pretty aggressively with multiple Memnites, a Frogmite, but that was mostly it. So I played a cookbook on turn 1 in hopes of top decking another green card so I can discard one Vengevine on their step, another one on my step, but this was just too good. This play was just too good for me to miss it, and I decided to go for it anyway. So I decided to risk this a bit, leave no Vengevines in my hand as a green card to pitch on force a figure, and just put them both in play and attack, get my opponent very close to two-shot. So I had a lot of damage for the next turn, and I got the Dryad Arbor. If you remember, if you ever played the Dryad Arbor in paper, then you know that on most of versions of Dryad Arbor, there is a text written which says Dryad Arbor is green, which means you can pitch it to force a figure. And so that was a top deck I needed. To win this game, my opponent was on 0 cards. So I just passed the turn, attack with everything, and I expected them to go for the attack. And in combat, I just pitch cast my force figure, destroyed the frogmite and the cranial plating, and that was the game. I survived on 1 life and killed my opponent on the swing back. I also had a option to either draw this card or gain 3 lives, so I had multiple options there. But that was the game. So let's see the game 3 against Affinity. Game 3 again, a very good hand with Neonate, able to very similar actually hand to the previous one. I think it's almost identical. Check. Sorry. Oh my God. This is identical hand because I'm showing the same game. Oh my God. Okay, that is it. We already saw this, so that was my mistake, and let's. We are done with this, so we can go to the next match. Obviously, I forgot we already saw all the games there, or I did some other mistake. Never mind. Never mind. That is it. I won that match, and we are now watching the match 2. Excuse me for my mistake. I had a very good hand here again, being able to. This is what this deck is actually trying to do. Go for the Burning Tree Emissary on turn 1 and go for the Asmo immediately because I cycled the Street Race this turn. Then cast my Valnakatal, putting total of 8 power on the field on turn 1, which can be pretty crazy. My opponent had the minor misstep there. So they played Nakatal, which means they were playing Zoo deck. I could have killed my opponent immediately. Um, I said this was the league of the misclicks, but yeah, I had the kill for the next turn anyway, so it ended up not mattering. But yeah, so let's see game 2 against Domain Zoo. Again, Neonate able to pitch cast. Able to put Vengevine into graveyard, and also had the Gemstone Caverns, which means it can get sicker than that too, because I can do it on turn 1. So I just put my Vengevine into graveyard. I find a cycle 2 of my street raids, which means I can play my Asmo, and my Asmo gets me back my Vengevine. So pretty sick. Turn 1 again against Domain Zoo, finding me cookbook. 7 power on the field. Vengevine attacking immediately for 4. Pretty crazy turn 1. Also, next turn, I still have a Burning Tree Emissary into Neonate in case they bolt my Vengevine. But they had the Leyland Binding here, which is fine. Still, for me, I'm able to go Emissary into Neonate. I decided to sack the Neonate, try to find another draw. And my opponent plays a Sign of Draco as a blocker. But I discard 2 cards and kill the Scion with using Asthma ability, so I'm able to attack for 6 damage there, put my opponent on 4. They play the Hiritsugu, but it is not good enough. Again, I misclick. I didn't even watch my draw. I just accidentally clicked 1 and went to the combat phase too fast. It almost cost me the game, but luckily I top decked for the win. It was misclick. My opponent put me on 8 life here, which means I'm dead next turn. So I needed something here. I got the Chain to the Rocks and I got to draw Arbor as a blocker. So my only option was um to top deck Epicure, and I got it on the next turn. So it was pretty lucky, but all of this happened just because I skipped through my main phase after top decking the Reckless Bushwhacker for the kill, but I got the Epicure anyway and finished off my opponent, so that ended up well enough for me. Okay, so let's see the game, match 3. Okay, in the match 3, again, I had the Chancellor. So if I have 3 draws here using the straight rates, I can get my Vengevine, Asmo also good, a lot of good stuff I can get here. So I cycle both of these. I didn't get anything great, but I have my Neonates to get rid of the Chancellor from the hand and redraw into something else. So I play my Mem Knight, play the fetch, attack with everything. Attack with everything, put my opponent on 11. My opponent kills the Mem Knight in hope to connect with Dragavan, but I have the Dread Arbor to block and trade with Dragavan, which I was happy to use. My opponent didn't have other plays, so I just play my Neonate. Neonate is a menace, has menace, so it's good for attacking in these situations where your opponent is low on life. And I got like when they got one creature like in this situation, they got the Murktide, but still I'm able to go through with the Neonate. And so I just played Cattle from my hand, attack with Neonate, hold off the big attack for the next turn. Also, if they kill Neonate, I save the fetch in my hand to redraw into another card. My opponent didn't find probably any removals, so they just consider that was the game 1 against Blue-Red Murktide. Okay, I got my Vengevine here and I got the Neonate, so I just need second creature to trigger this. I got my land, which was important. I got also have a Talia here, but I need a white source to cast it, and I did get it. So just decide to play my Talia and then go for the double spell next turn, bring back Vengevine with the Bushwhacker. And that seemed as a good plan for me. So my opponent went Ragavan into Ragavan into Bolt, and I should have played Drad Arbor here again to prevent my opponent from connecting with Ragavan. They got the Vengevine off the top, and again I didn't do what I really wanted to do, but it didn't matter because I had a good play anyway. I wanted to not play this cookbook this turn, but just change, then play a Dryad Arbor, and then play the Reckless Bushwhacker, so I get a haste to my Bushwhacker and put my opponent on 1 life. But I was kind of I was not focused enough and played too fast. But it didn't matter because my hand was pretty good anyway. So my opponent went for the subtlety here, and I had decent attack here because they needed to block the Vengevine. So my reckless bushwhacker was going through anyway, and I had another bushwhacker on the top, which is 2 damage with haste, which means they need a lot of removal, and they of course don't get it. So despite of my number of misclicks I had and just playing too fast, um, going through the phases, I skipped a few good plays I had, and I succeeded to win anyway. Okay, that was the match 3, and we'll now watch the last match of the league, and then we will switch back to the feat against Hardened Scale. This was also Hardened Scales matchup, which I successfully won pretty easily. Actually, I went for the mulligan to 6 here. My opponent started with Gemstone Caverns, pretty good start. And I started with the Epicure. So I went for the Emissary, discard one of the Asmo, play another Asmo, and just attack for 1. My opponent had another Automaton and another Artifact spell, or 2 spells, which grew their Automaton pretty good. I blocked with both, so they must use the welding jar, but still this was pretty bad for me because my opponent really had a lot of stuff going on. They had the Ozolith, the Nexus, 2 more automatons, and yeah, it was not looking good in the first match. They also had Needle and this Ozolith, and so I had to concede this situation. I had my Chain to the Rocks and Force of Vigor on the sideboard, which are very good sideboard cards in this matchup. Also had a pretty good hand here to start with, so I went for the Stomping Ground, Wild Necatl on turn. Sorry, I drew into Neonate, and that's why I went for discard Vengevine immediately. Redraw, get the Emissary, Bushwhacker triggers the Vengevine, and I go through for the 10 damage on turn 2, which is pretty good. My opponent immediately concedes, and yeah, it was time for game 3. I start this time with the Gemstone Caverns. So in this league, there was 2 situations where I successfully used my one-off Gemstone Caverns on the play, and it was very good for me. I was able to go for the Caverns here and bring the Vengevine back on my turn 1, attack for 4 damage, which was a big part of why I was able to win this game so easily. And I drew into the Chain to the Rocks, pay 2 mana for the ward, exile my opponent's automaton, attack for 5, put my opponent on 11 life on turn 3, and still had the two Reckless Bushwhackers in hand, which means I only need 1 top deck to go for a big damage there. And I successfully draw it and immediately go for exactly lethal, and that was the game. That was the second game, right? The last game, I think. Let me just quickly check this again. This game's yeah, that was it. Okay, so we can now watch the defeat against other Hardened Scales player. Okay, at least this other hard and scaled player was playing for trophies, so they beat me. Okay. Uh, I had mediocre hand, nothing crazy. Just two Moemenites and the Bushwhacker on turn 2, which is decent, can definitely win some games. But it wasn't enough to win this game because Hard didn't know what I was playing against. And the Hardened Scales just has a lot of these small creatures which can block my creatures very efficiently. And I had to use the cookbook here to just kill this irrelevant 1-1 to go through for the 4 damage, put my opponent on 10. But that was it from me, basically. My opponent was able to cast this automaton. And I went through with everything. My opponent blocks the Bushwhacker. I go in for 5 damage, put my opponent on a 5. This put a Vengevine into my graveyard. Before opponent puts needle on the cookbook, and it would be really good if I was able to get the second food to kill this either construct token or the automaton, but this was too much. And at this situation, my opponent got the Shadow Spear and the Ravager, so I didn't have a chance anymore, and that was the game. I put my opponent on a 5 life, but hand was, I think, one of the most mediocre hands through this league. Okay, so boarded in Force of Vigors and Chain to the Rocks. I had very good turn 2 here. Emissary, Memnite, Bushwhacker, pretty aggressive. So I started with Sacred Foundry and Forest and played all these cards. Emissary, Memnite, Bushwhacker holding the Chain to the Rocks to clear the way for the turn 3, which means this hand can be pretty good, very aggressive. Attacking here for 7 damage, putting my opponent on turn 13 with the Chain to the Rocks in hand. Can be really good, especially against the Welding Jar. This Chain to the Rocks just works so well. So I went for it, pay the ward, attack for 5, put my opponent on 8. Looking very good so far. I could only be better if I had some Vengevine in the mix, but as I said, this hardened scales, especially the version this guy played, just works very well against all these small creatures. And they got their automaton back using their Boseiju on the Chain to the Rocks, and this was pretty big. And I top decked the Vengevine, and I got to the point where I had a decent attack here, so I decided to just attack with everything. My opponent had the Welding Jar there and had the multiple options of blocking, but I think they decided for the best option, and they put the counters on the Nexus, which means Nexus got them the turn 2 two turn clock with dealing 5 damage, and I needed I needed top deck this reckless bushwhacker immediately, but I got land first, which then I discarded to find the bushwhacker. If bushwhacker was immediately on the top, I would have lethal, but this way my opponent survived on 1 life. So pretty close game. I put leave my opponent on 1 life. Was very close to the kill. I think there is nothing I could have done better in this last game, although there were some misclicks in the previous games. But that was it. That is entire league. I always enjoy playing this deck. This is one of my favorite decks to play. Unfortunately, it's not on the top tier of the meta, so I don't play it too often because I'm trying to trying to play to brew a really competitive list, but this is the closest I got to being with this deck being really competitive, and I think this is version I'm most excited for. For all the versions I played in the last 5-6 months, and having this option of jamming Vengevine into the mix in this very aggressive shell. I think Vengevine fits in very well. Never had problems discarded it. Never stuck in my hand. Also, this Chancellor works very well in this deck, and I think it is. I think it looks. I'm really satisfied with how it looks right now. Um, of course, if this deck ever gets some broken card that fits in very well, this I think this deck will immediately have option to become a very serious deck in the meta game. But so far it can be this far it can be considered as a very fun tier 2 tier 3 deck, which can definitely win a lot of games, and there are a lot of games you just win freely, and this type of decks usually work well in the meta game, because some games some matchups are just so free. So basically, you get your opponent, and you are you have like 80% of winning, and they feel some matchups just feel very free, and this type of decks always work well in on a big events. So I think it has definitely great potential, and it can do good results in the current form, but I'm always hoping for some boost to this archetype. And but this new version I made also really makes me happy about this Bushwhacker Burning Tree Emissary type of decks. Just I finally find a build where Vengevine and Asmo is very desirable creature in this archetype too, because it's a 1 mana 3/3, which is definitely kind of the idea of this deck. What we're trying to do, just to gem 1 mana 3/3 on turn 1, then go for the Bushwhacker on turn 2 using either Memnite or the Emissary, and these Chancellors, Street Raids, Vengevines, just fuel or that additionally, and they are very well fitted into the deck. So kind of just as I said, we need to make good sideboard decisions for the kind of try to guess what metagame will be out there in the games, expecting in the leagues, and sometimes Fury will be too good, sometimes Chain to the Rocks will be better than Fury. It really you can't guess it every time, but you can try to explore and see what works better, especially if you're playing this at your local game store. Then you should really be able to assess better. It was either Chained or Fury better for you, or is it Talia or a Leyline of Combustion better in these slots? Do you want to play more Chalice of the Voids or more Endurance? But generally, these are the cards you want on your sideboard, and there are few more other options like Alpine Moon, Magus of the Moon, if you're playing against a lot of Amulet Titan and stuff like that, of course. But I think this is a reasonable choice for the current open meta game you're expecting at MTGO. Okay, that is it for today. Hope you liked the gameplay. Hope you liked the deck list. If you want to support the channel, click like, click subscribe, and that's it for this time. Goodbye.